Hi, everybody. Okay, TikTok people started up.
That's my dream too. I compete all over the world for these, and I finally found them in New York. Oh, location. Oh,
Okay. Okay. Hello. Hi, Patricia. Hi. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Tochi, aka Papa Dr. Tochi, Mama of the men's and the women's. My website is at tochi.us, drtochi.com. Okay. And you can book me there for your spiritual consultations to discuss spiritual and other issues that concern you. I also have dream interpretations there. And I also have events on my website. I also have courses and events and courses and products on my page. Okay. If you're reading stuff on the website and you don't understand it, be sure to send us an email or DM. Okay. Okay, Patricia is from Ontario, Canada. Hey, that's that's my place. That's my province. When you're booking a consultation and you click on the link for a consultation, my calendar on Calendly will show. Okay. If you click on a date and it's not doing anything, it means that on that date, I'm not available. The calendar will automatically present you with the times I'm available in your own time zone. So you don't need to do a time zone conversion. You don't need to worry and say, okay, she is here and I need to figure out how many hours difference. You don't need to do that. Just pick the time that works for you among the time slots that are presented to you. And I think people get confused about that and then they'll email us and say, how do I figure? You don't need to figure out where I am. I could be anywhere in the world. Okay. Um, I could be anywhere. So all you have to do is just select the time that works for you based on the available time slots. And it will do, and all you have to do is show up at the time that you selected. So if you selected 3 p.m., you show up at 3 p.m. your time. Don't worry about whether it's 3 p.m. for me. or 2 p.m. or 1 a.m. You don't need to worry about that. You just worry about your appointment. Okay. And I'll only wait for 10-15 minutes. If you don't show up 10-15 minutes, I'll mark it as a no show and move on to the next person. Okay. When you go to my website and look at the events page, you will see that I have 2 events that are coming up. The first one is level 1, reclaim your authority. This is for people who have been doing rituals, working with spirit guides, and now they're ready to move to the next level. Okay. Because they're working with spirit guides and not everything is working out the way they hoped it will work out. So that's level 1. What do you do when you're working with your spirit guides, you're working with your ancestors, you're doing all the things that you're supposed to do, and it's not working out? What do you do? That's what that level 1 is for. And level 1 is going to be starting up on May the 3rd. Okay. And it's for 7 days, 2 hours each day, 7 days. We will go through challenging material because a lot of us need to be reprogrammed. And I will tell you this, each time I facilitate that class, I am even changed and I learn new things. Each time I, the facilitator, go through the material myself. And, and then level 2 will be starting on May the 10th. And that's open to those who have completed level 1. So level 1 is reclaim your authority, and level 2 is embody your authority. I'm going to connect a mic to TikTok because I'm not sure. Because sometimes the TikTok folks say they can't hear me or they get like something going on. I'm looking for my portable mic thing. Let's see. Okay, there it is. I found it. So, TikTok folks, hold on. Let me mic my device here. And I do have people who they will send a DM and start writing, or even emails, and they will start writing their dreams, like a detailed dream. The email or the DMs. Okay. I'm not a typer. Okay. So there's no way I'm going to sit down there and be typing with 1 or 2 fingers the interpretation to your dreams. Okay. I'm not going to be doing that with 2 thumbs. I'm just going to be honest with you. So just book the service. Go to my website, book the service, and be done with it. We'll send you a written PDF of your dream interpretation. Okay? I want to send a quick shout out and thanks to all those who participated in the Earth ritual with me this week. I hope that the Earth ritual was as transformative for you as it was for me. And do you know that with the new direction we're going with Lesedi, we're focusing on earth based African spiritual traditions. And one of the things we need to be getting back into is getting in touch with the land. For those of you on YouTube, I would appreciate a thumbs up if you can give the class a thumbs up. That lets the algorithm know to inform people that class is in session. Hello, Obukowo. Hello, Joy and Moya. Hello, Perpetua. Can you do? Hi, Kiona Empress. Okay. And for those of you on TikTok, I would appreciate some power taps. That also lets the platform inform people that class is in session. Okay. One of the things I learned or remembered, I don't know which verb to use. Thank you for giving a thumbs up. One of the things I learned or remembered in doing these earth rituals was how grounding it is. It's very grounding. And how revivifying earth rituals can be. When we're doing earth rituals, we are called to allow, not to struggle, not to fight, not to perform, not to act, not to try to get things done, but we learn how to sit and allow Mother Earth to do what she does best. Okay. When you are grounding, when you're working with Earth, give it some time. The Earth element is slow but sure. Give it some time. And I think some of us miss that because we're rushing. And I will speak to that too because I do rush a lot. I'm trying to get this done and trying to get that done. Okay. So, one of the things I did learn from this week's Earth ritual or remember is to slow down. Okay. And sit with it. Slow down and sit. Sit with the trees, the grass, the soil, the rocks, and all the organisms there, the birds, the worms, the beetles, the whatever it is that's there, the bacteria. Just sit with it. Just sit with it. And allow the earth to do her work. In many African earth-based spiritual traditions, earth is central. Earth is central. And so when people call on the earth, they also call on their ancestors. When they call on the earth, they call on the original owners of the land. They call on the territorial spirits in charge of that particular piece of land where they are. Okay. So working with earth is very powerful. If you have done a divination and you have been told that your spiritual element is earth, not astrological element, not zodiac element, not birth element, your spiritual element is earth, you would do well to learn the many ways you can start working with earth. Start looking into your culture, start looking into your heritage, start looking into your lineage and understand, how do my people work with earth? That's the very least you could do. How do my people work with earth? And how can I use this to my advantage? Yeah. How can I use this to my advantage? Okay. There are some problems that can be automatically solved by Earth. But those problems that are solved by Earth, you have to be patient to give it time to work out and work its way through. Okay. The the other thing that I enjoyed from the Earth ritual we did this week was just listening. Just listening. And sometimes you can pose a question to Earth and listen for the answer. You can just pose a question. This thing that I'm looking at, is it right for me? This thing that I'm doing, is it right for me? Even as you allow the Earth to regulate your nervous system, it can help you hear better. So, what you're hearing is from you, but the Earth is assisting you in hearing yourself better. Okay. Earth, in many African Earth based spiritual traditions, there are specific rituals that are done to cleanse the individual so that they can come back in harmony with the earth. Because if you are not in harmony with your environment, you will roam the face of the earth with nowhere to rest, nowhere to lay your head. And so when you see people, or maybe you are the one who has experienced that, I am restless. I have nowhere to lay my head. There's nowhere where I'm finding peace. One of the questions you need to ask yourself is, am I in harmony with the earth? Am I in harmony with Mother Earth? So that is why a lot of these spiritual traditions were centered around earth, being in harmony with earth. And even their cults had earth as a central deity. I hope by now some of you have gotten to see part two of Where Are the Women in African Spiritual Traditions, part two, dealing with, I believe it was Central Africa. The one I put out before, that one came out yesterday on YT. The one before that was for West Africa. And we looked at how women navigate or navigated past tense, because a lot of women have gotten shut down and disconnected from connecting with earth. But there are some societies and communities where women are still connecting. Okay. So and I found it interesting when researching what women were doing in Central Africa to find out that they the traditions there already have the blueprint, but Christianity came in and wiped out a lot of that. So not only did it wipe out women's roles in spirituality, it wiped out their connection to the earth. This is the reason why there are so many of us as women who are restless. We feel disconnected. And we go looking from one solution to the other. Oh, let me go uh, do this empowerment thing, or let me do this self-development thing, or let me go do this ritual, or let me go hang out at this conference. And we're doing all these things. So we're doing everything but the very basic thing we're supposed to do, which is connect with Earth in a very meaningful and intentional manner. Let me ask a question directly to you who is in class today. When was the last time you placed your bare feet on the earth? I'm not saying you placed your bare feet on concrete. I'm not saying, you know, you just tiptoed around your house or something. When was the last time you sat down intentionally, sat down, you didn't have shoes, sandals, socks on, and buried your toes in the soil? Okay, Scorpio Intuitive said last summer. That's what, 12 months ago? Almost 12 months ago. The difference between us and a lot of these women on the continent is that they walk the earth every day. Their feet touch the bare earth every day. Okay, Miss Kiona says, I've never. Okay. The difference between us and they walk on bare earth every day as a lifestyle, not just as a spiritual practice. And we find out that because they walk and bury their feet intentionally in the earth, there are certain things that bother us and ail us in the Western world that don't affect them the way it affects us. We have certain illnesses that they don't have. We have illnesses that are not just born from organisms, but we also have illnesses that come from psychosomatic states, and they don't have it. We tend to have higher incidences of cancer compared to them. They tend to be more resourceful than we are when faced with challenges. In my personal experience, I have been with women in villages. People call them village women, women in the countryside. And they will have a huge challenge facing them. And with their bare feet on the ground, they will hand it off to spirit and move on to the next thing. You and I, or let me speak for myself because maybe you're better than I am, would sit and ruminate over it. How am I going to do this? How am I going to deal with this? How am I going to solve this? What, they just hand it off and move on to the next thing. And one way or the other, that issue gets solved. Now, when you go to the urban areas in these countries, the women there are like us, quote unquote, civilized, sophisticated, westernized. And then they start showing the same kind of mental and physical and spiritual challenges that we do because they're not connected. So, as we go through these Lesedi episodes, I am hoping that you personalize what you see and hear. That's where the efficacy of the material lies, in the personalization of what you're learning from these classes. And that's the intention, that you start personalizing these things. Not every problem requires a ritual, or at least a huge ritual with offerings. Not every problem requires that. Not every problem requires fasting and praying and casting and binding. Not every problem requires that. Some problems just require connection and time. But you have to connect and you have to give time. Okay. See how, and ask yourself, how can I start personalizing this material? One other interesting thing that came up during the earth ritual this week that I'd like to share with you is this concept of lineages and ancestry. And I think this is an important conversation that needs to be had. Okay. And there were some conversations on my YT channel around that as well. There is nothing wrong with doing some investigation to find out what your ancestors practiced. Let me give an example. For those of us in the Americas, and when I say Americas, I mean all of North America, South America, Central America. Majority of us are not descended from or connected to the Yoruba. I repeat, many of us in the Americas are not connected to or descended from the Yoruba. This is one of the reasons why some of us would do Yoruba rituals, and it's sexy and exciting in the moment, but the results are not long lasting. But I do understand why many of us are into the Yoruba traditional religions like Ifa, Santeria, Candomblé, and so forth, because that's what's most available. That's what's easily available. That is heavily documented. But if you were to go get your DNA done and your DNA said, well, you do your DNA shows that you are linked to the Congo people or linked to the Bantu people or linked to that. It is your obligation to dig deeper. If you dig deeper, you might find out that majority of your DNA comes from the Bamileke of Cameroon. They're not Yoruba. You might find out that your DNA comes from the Tiv of Nigeria. They're not Yoruba. You might find out that your DNA comes from the Bambuti of the DRC and RC, Democratic Republic of Congo. They're not Yoruba. You might find out that your DNA, majority of it is Wolof in the Senegambia. They are not Yoruba. And each of these ethnic groups I've mentioned, and remember there are thousands, I believe there's over 4,000 across the continent of Africa. Each and every one of them have their own unique indigenous spiritual traditions, equally as rich, equally as fascinating as Ifa. And the fact that they may not be as highly documented as Ifa doesn't mean that they don't exist. So I keep saying, pick the low hanging fruit first. Other people's cultures and things like that may look attractive and sexy and whatnot, but the low hanging fruit, the one that is most easily accessible to you, the one that will manifest things for you the fastest, is that of your own people. Now, I know someone might ask and say, okay, I'm in the Americas and, my ancestors were, enslaved. I don't know. Where do I start? Get the DNA done. Consider that an investment into your own self actualization. Get your DNA done. And it's not that expensive. Because once you have that DNA done, what it does is that it will give you a map. It's like a treasure map. Remember to power tap the screen, give us some likes. I'd appreciate that so that the platform will let others know that class is in session. Excuse me. And for those of you on YT, please remember the thumbs up. So that's why you want to do the DNA. because what it does is it becomes your treasure map. You're no longer guessing. You're no longer guessing. Okay, Miss Kiona is sharing with us. I got ancestry DNA and Native American DNA done as well. Only 32% Nigerian. Do you realize that the term Nigeria is a political designation? When it comes to ethnicity, there is nothing like Nigerian. So when you're reading your results and it says, well, you're 32% Nigerian. In Nigeria, there are more than 450 ethnic groups. So do you see why I say you need to get the details? Someone says, okay, I'm 32% Nigerian. Okay, it kind of narrows the scope. So somewhere in West Africa, okay, you have 32% Nigerian. So where is the other 68%? Where's the other 68%? So you see, if someone says to me, oh, your DNA says you're Nigerian, it is helpful but not helpful. It is helpful but not helpful. It is helpful in the sense that it lets me know, okay, my DNA, if I'm looking to start tracking down and honing in on my DNA, I can focus on the Nigerian side and not spend a lot of time looking over at Egypt. Thank you, I'm living good. And welcome to class. Okay. And if you watch the video I posted, was it 2 weeks ago, last week or 2 weeks ago, the Igbo Israelite myth? In that class, I discuss why people are so focused on major civilizations like the Israelite, the Egyptian, and so forth, the Greek, the Roman. And the reason why we are so focused on those civilizations and trying to figure out how we're connected to those civilizations is because in the Western world, those civilizations are the ones that were the most studied, the ones that were focused on by Western scholars. Western scholars were concerned about Israel. They were concerned about Egypt, Mesopotamia, Greece, Rome, those empires. And they did their research and they published work. And like I've mentioned elsewhere, and I will mention it here today, and I also mentioned it in that class, we tend to have a bias towards text. If you go to somebody and say, well, tell me the story of your people, and the people give an oral tradition, and I go to somebody else and say, well, give me the story of your people, and they say, here, let me give you this book. We tend to believe the book more than the oral tradition. And so we have this bias. Even scholars have this bias. They tend to call written down information primary source and an oral information as third level or tertiary source of information. So there's that bias. But what gets lost in that conversation is this: what guarantee do you have that that which was written was correct, that it's true? The fact that something is written doesn't automatically make it true. And we make this mistake all the time. You'll see people in the comment section arguing, oh, there's this person who wrote that the Igbos are from Israelite. You don't know what you're talking about. Where did the person get those facts from? The fact that they wrote it down doesn't make it accurate. That's the challenge that Christians have with the Bible today. There are thousands of versions of the Bible. Which one is the accurate one? And people will argue, oh, my Bible is the accurate one, and the other person says, no, my Bible version is the accurate one, and the other one say, no, my Bible version is the accurate one. And all these Bibles are different. This is the reason why a lot of ignorant people believe what everything they read on the internet, because they're like, if it was written on the internet, then that makes it true. We have a bias towards that which is written, and we tend to believe it more than what is orally transmitted. But the fact of the matter is, we need to accept that not all information is written. There are different kinds of verbal information. There's oral information, which is a type of verbal, and there's written, which is another type of verbal. There's a meaning of verbal. Verbal is anything that is said or written. That's what verbal information means. Someone with enough money or power can edit the text easily. Correct. And I talked about the Quran. The Quran in Arabic is inviolate. You're prohibited from having variations on the Arabic Quran. Where the variations come in is in the translations of the Arabic Quran. You see the difference? But with the Bible, there was like people picking and choosing what gets included and what doesn't get included, and what's part of it, what doesn't get part of it. Thanks for liking the live, Kush Kush. So the fact that in my village we tell the story of our origins, that we share our cosmological traditions through storytelling, doesn't make it any less valid than someone who has their own traditions written down. Because once I write down my own traditions, then now we have competing written traditions. And so that's why you have all these sociologists and anthropologists, and they will say, well, let's go talk to the primitive people. And we want to be the first people to write it down so that when people come after us, our text will become reference material. And that has exactly happened. So, like when I put together these classes, I'm looking at people who, for instance, will go into the Ituri forest in the Congo and interview the pygmies and write down what the pygmies told them. because I have no other way of getting that information. I have to depend on that person who went to the pygmies inside the Ituri forest or met the Bambuti inside the forest or met the Aka people in the forest and talked to them and interviewed them and recorded what they said. I have to depend on that book because they wrote down firsthand information of what they heard from these people. But again, here's the challenge. When we write books, when we write articles, when we write things, we usually have a bias. It's very difficult not to have a bias. And so that is why when you're looking at colonial narratives, there's a bias. Yes, they might say, oh, yeah, we went to Igbo land. We saw the natives. They were short, they were dark, they were muscular, and they were also greedy. You see, once that person writes they were also greedy, that's a bias because that's a subjective evaluation. Somebody else might go and interact with those people and not may see them as being ambitious and smart. But this other person thinks, oh, they're being greedy. And then it would be wrong for me reading this book that was written in the 1800s or maybe early 1900s to turn around and say, oh, that's absolute truth. Every Igbo person is greedy just because somebody wrote it in 18 something. So that's why when we're reading and researching this material, we have to understand the bias of the writer. We have to understand the bias of the author. Where was this person from? And what was their objective when they were writing this information down? What was their goal? What did they hope to achieve? And usually when we present information, we have an objective. This is the reason why 5 people can read the same Bible and have 5 different understandings of the same Bible they read, because those 5 people have 5 different intentions when they were reading that Bible, even though it's the same Bible they were reading. So if I come to interview you and I have a certain objective in my mind for interviewing you, my objective will show up as a bias when I write down that interview I had with you. So I'm taking my time to explain this because sometimes people think that, oh, when you're involved in scholarship, it's all about just reading a book and quoting it verbatim. It's more than that if you're a real scholar. You have to understand the bias of the person who wrote it. And so that's why when I looked at some of the comments under my video class, the Igbo Israelite myth, there are some I didn't respond to and some I had to delete. Because obviously they would read a book that is proposing one viewpoint and they say that's the truth. Oh, this person wrote it down, so obviously it must be the truth. There's one comment I let sit there because it was so funny in its ridiculosity. One person wrote, the proof that Igbos are descended from Israelites is that millions of Igbo people today remember their Israelite origins. Millions of Igbo people today remember their Israelite origins. No, honey. Millions of Igbos today are thinking about how they can make money. Okay, they're not, some of them have no idea of what Israelites look like or did, aside of what they read in their Bible. And even at that, that's not priority. Their priority is making money. They have no memory of no Israelite, nothing. But you have wholesale statements like that somebody wrote down, and then somebody else reads it and they say, oh, okay, all Igbo people remember their Israelite origins. No, they don't. And then people miss the bigger discussion, the bigger question. Why do Igbos or anybody else have to attach themselves to Israelites in order to be valid? Why do I have to prove my connection to the Babylonians in order to be spiritually or socially relevant? Why can I not be relevant on my own? And when you go through that class, you will see that the same thing was done to Indigenous Americans and Indigenous Canadians, where missionaries who encountered Indigenous tribes tried to justify their existence by trying to connect them willy-nilly to some of the children of Jacob, one of the 12 children, one of the 12 tribes. Because they're like, these people here must have been from Israel. You do not have a picture of Jacob. You do not have a picture of any of his 12 sons or any of the daughters. You know, back in the day, they didn't write much about the daughters. So I'm sure Jacob had a lot of daughters, but you have no photographs, no pictures, no drawings, accurate drawings of what Jacob and his family looked like. How did you arrive at the conclusion that the indigenous peoples you met in the Americas were descended from Jacob? And that's again a bias, because in their mind, they're thinking, okay, Jacob was from the Palestinian region. He must have been dark skinned. He must have been short. He must have had some kind of straightish or slightly curly hair. And I'm over here in this new world, and I'm seeing people here looking like that. So therefore, they must be. So I say these things so that when we are going through these classes that I'm now putting out, we are adequately grounded. Okay. Okay. We're adequately grounded. Do I need to be connected to anyone in order to be valid? Do I need to be connected to anyone in order to be relevant? Can I not stand in my own right? Do I have to be Israelite? Do I have to be Egyptian? Because remember, there's also, factions here in the Americas who believe they're descended from Egypt. But these same people, when you ask them, go and get your DNA done, they will not have any DNA tracing them to Egypt. But they will tell you, oh, we are kings and queens descended from Egypt. Why? Because they believe this is what is going to give them social relevance. If I say that I'm descended from the pharaohs and the queens of Egypt, that I'm from royal lineage, then people will respect me. No, they won't. A person who wants to disrespect you will disrespect you regardless. A person who wants to talk shit about you will talk shit about you regardless. They don't care your color, your money, your education, your status. Anybody who wants to mess with you will mess with you. But why again do people anchor themselves to ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt? Because that was one of the major civilizations that has been studied by Western scholars for a very long time. And so people are saying, oh, okay, I have to find a way to connect myself to this thing. But I still come back to point one. Why struggle to connect yourself to all these civilizations when you can stand on your own? When you can stand with your immediate ancestors? Why bother? And people will be challenged by that because, for instance, if someone has made a living talking about being descended from ancient Kemet, okay, and they have merchandise that they're selling, okay, based on ancient Kemet. They have identity, they have created, so their ego is attached to ancient Kemet. And you come to such a person and you say, sir or ma'am, what does your actual DNA show? The person will get offended and the person will fight you because you're attacking their survival. It's just like if someone ran up to me and let's say my ego was attached to it. Someone running up to me and saying, you're not a doctor. You have no right to call yourself doctor. I will start feeling some kind of way because I'm like thinking, how dare you come to me and say, I shouldn't call myself doctor. I'm not entitled to be addressed as doctor. Do you know what I had to do to earn this title? And then I'll start getting flustered and then I'll start getting aggravated at the person because I've tied my whole identity and income and image and ego to doctor. So I know how it feels. And so that's why in those videos I say, we need to be kind because waking up can be painful. Shedding false identities can be painful. It can be painful. Okay, TikTok comes with a stupid test. After 1 hour, TikTok comes with a test you have to do, where you have to drag a puzzle. See now, I'm going to be doing this now. Saying unable to verify. Hold on. I have to do this puzzle thing. So on TikTok, it shows you this puzzle thing. You have to drag a puzzle piece. If not, they terminate your TikTok in 5 minutes. The ridiculosity of the whole thing. That's why I don't like messing with TikTok. There's just too many games. You're spending time playing all these games than doing what you need to do is just ridiculous. So I understand that. Because if, let's say, for instance, I'm making a living based on my doctor title, everybody knows I'm doctor. I'm making a living. I'm selling merchandise based on my doctor title. I'm creating classes based on my doctor title. I'm doing my consultations and my practical work based on my doctor title. And then somebody comes to me and says, "Oh, you're not a doctor." I'll be aggravated. Or maybe somebody comes and says, "Oh, that school where you got your doctorate is not an accredited school." I'll be very aggravated because now I'm sitting back and I'm looking and I'm saying to myself, what do I do now? Everything I've built has been on the foundation of doctor. And now you're telling me this foundation is a fake foundation, is a false foundation. There's no foundation here. That means everything I've built on top of it is going to collapse. And this is the dilemma that shows up with identity. So just as I go out there and identify myself with the title doctor, is how people go out and identify themselves as a descendant of Israelites, a descendant of Kemet, a descendant of Arabia, a descendant of this, a descendant of Rome, connected to the Greek mythology. You have people saying, "Oh, whatever it is that I'm doing is descended from ancient Greek." And then you tell the person, "Well, go do a DNA and prove that you have this connection," and they do the DNA and it doesn't prove that connection, they will get aggravated. And sometimes people don't want to do the DNA because they know what the DNA is going to show. There are so many Santeria Lukumi practitioners in Cuba and Mexico. I remember that Santeria and Lukumi are derived from the Ifa of the Yorubas. If we did a DNA of all those folks in Cuba and Mexico that practice Santeria or Lukumi, are you going to find out that majority of their DNA comes from West Africa? Are you going to find out that their DNA, significant portion of their DNA comes from the Yoruba tribe? Probably not. And I'm saying probably because I don't have the data, but I'm saying probably not. Most likely not. Many of them are going to show a predominance of DNA from Europe. Many of them are going to show a predominance of DNA from the indigenous tribes that populated those regions before colonial invasion. And the any Black or African DNA in there would be from intermarrying and interbreeding. Then now, how would that person feel if I said to them, okay, your DNA is not showing that you are your DNA, the dominant DNA is not showing any connection to the Yoruba. So you have no right to practice Santeria or Lukumi. The person would probably go ballistic because this is what they've been doing. This is what their grandparents have been doing. This is all that they know. This is their social circle. This is what gives them religious significance. And I run up to them and say, well, you have no right to do this. They will be very aggravated. So that's why I say it takes courage to dig for the truth. And it also takes courage to admit that you might have been plucking the wrong fruit. But I also say that there is a lot of reward in doing the research because you might find out that if you do the research, what you have is just as rich, if not richer, than what you have right now or what you're practicing right now. I wish I could bring you into my study where I read about these cultures. Some of them are bone chillingly deep and profound. They don't have orishas, they have other things. And they work with the earth. And they have different cosmological structures. And if you were to be part of that, your life will be changed forever. It will no longer be like, oh, I can run into any spiritual shop or run into any botanica and pick up statues of, the orishas I can find there. No. Some of the practices across the continent are so deep, so profound, so mysterious, and so powerful. Okay. And then we start looking at what the women are doing within those traditions. So there is profit to doing this investigation for yourself. There's profit in doing this investigation for yourself. What if I'm a Mende? The Mende are found in Liberia and Sierra Leone. They have a powerful women's cult. What if I'm Luo? What if I'm from the Ganda people known as the Baganda? What then? You are a human and you have the right and ability to choose and practice any type of spirituality. Why struggle? Let me use it as an example. Okay. What do you know about Bwiti? Tell me what you know about Bwiti, the spiritual tradition of Bwiti. Okay. I'm reading McDad's comment here saying, what about I am a human and I have the right and ability to choose and practice any type of spirituality that is most beneficial to me. So I'm saying to him, okay, what do you know about Bwiti? There are a lot of people from around the world who go to Africa specifically to get initiated into Bwiti and participate in Bwiti ceremonies. What do you know about Bwiti? And I talk about the Bwiti in my class, the last class that I uploaded on YT. They have a sacred psychedelic wood called Ibonga, in French, le bois sacre. Okay, good. Thank you. You don't know about that. How long will it take for you to learn Bwiti? Because there is an ethnic group called Bwiti. How long would it take for you to learn their language, have them accept you, figure out the right lineage to initiate you into? How much would it cost you to be flying to Central Africa anytime you wanted to participate in Bwiti ceremonies? How long will it take for you to establish yourself as an authentic Bwiti practitioner, mentor others, teach others, solve problems with Bwiti? If someone in the Bwiti tradition who speaks Bwiti or any of the languages of the peoples around there say something deep, how long will it take for you to understand what it means, not just linguistically, but also culturally? It would take you years. And the only way for you to get around that is to uproot yourself from your country, fly over there and start living there with them in the forest. But you have a right to do it. You have a right to do it. Mhm. You have every right to do that. But let's say, for instance, Hold on. I want to pull up something. But let's say, for instance, okay, people, you decided to study the indigenous practices of the Bedouin. How how difficult would that be for you? You sat down and said, I want to understand what the Bedouin were practicing before the arrival of Islam in the 7th century. How difficult would it be for you to start learning that and investigating that? You already speak Arabic. You don't have to travel far. You don't have to fly anywhere. If there are some traditions that were written down, you can easily read them. And if you have some people who are telling the oral traditions of the Bedouin, you do not need a translator. This is what we're discussing here. If you did your DNA and you found out that, oh, majority of my blood, my DNA comes from the Bedouin, that tells me that I have an affinity to the intelligences of the land where the Bedouin are found. And that if I approach them and work with them, they will recognize my DNA quickly and easily. They would identify me as their child, as one of them. So, what we're saying here is that you cannot, we're not saying here you cannot be a scholar of other spiritual traditions. Yes, you can be a scholar of other spiritual traditions, but you're also encouraged to be an expert in your own spiritual tradition and use that as a basis for investigating and understanding other spiritual traditions. There are so many Ifa priests, people who have traveled to Nigeria to get initiated into Ifa, and they're not Yoruba. They don't speak Yoruba. They know how to recite some orikis for the Orishas. They know how to recite certain prayers in Yoruba, but that's all they know how to do. And so if I wanted to communicate some spiritual secrets to them, I will have to translate it into English. And you know as well as I do, as someone who speaks more than one language, that a lot gets lost in the translation. It doesn't land the same way as the original. The Bedouin, as Salam Alaikum is Arabic. But there are certain things the Bedouin in your country do that you instinctively and culturally understand. You may not speak their dialect, but you understand what they're doing. You understand what they're doing. And they will more easily teach you things than they would teach me. If I went and showed up in there, they'd be like, who's this black woman? But if you showed up in there, they'd be like, okay, he doesn't understand our dialect. We'll make it work. He's one of us. Because the DNA is there. And the DNA speaks for you. My DNA doesn't speak for me over there. And if they were working with the spirit guides over there, and they say, well, here's your daughter, Tochi, the spirit guides over there be like, Tochi who? This is the reason why some people will go to all these other places and they're collecting initiations like trophies, but they can't do anything with it. They can't solve problems with it. Some of them become teachers in it. Oh, yes, now I'm a Babalawo, now I'm a Sangoma, now I'm a this, now I'm a that. And they open up a shop and they print cards and they have a website and they're doing all these rituals and whatnot. But are those rituals working? If I need money to pay my rent, can you do a ritual to handle that? But many of these people will be doing rituals for intangible things like, oh, I'll do a ritual for you so you'll have peace of mind. Oh, I'll do a ritual for you to increase your spiritual power, which is fine. But if my rent is due, can you do a ritual to bring me resources to pay my rent or my mortgage or my lease? You see, that's where the rubber hits the road. Do you mean that a basic knowledge of spiritual practice would help me to learn other spiritual practices from other countries or continents? A basic knowledge of Bedouin spiritual practice will serve you well to learn other spiritual practices. Let me be specific. To be that specific. Because once you understand what the Bedouin are doing and why they're doing what they're doing and how they're doing what they're doing, you now use that and map it onto the other systems that you're learning. You can map it onto the Jewish system, the Kabbalistic system. And then you can even see where Kabbalah borrowed from the Bedouin. You can see where they borrowed. And I'm using borrow in a kind way. I put out a short video clip this morning on YT, but I put it out yesterday on other platforms. Do Christians and Muslims know Why Bedouin? Bedouin because that's the dominant people in your region. Do your DNA and find out what's in your DNA. But for now, that's the dominant people in your region. So the short video I put it out on TikTok as well. Okay. I said, are Christians and Muslims aware that they are practicing African traditional religions? And many of them don't. Many of them will say, oh, African traditional religions are demonic and devilish and so on and so on and so forth. But every time they walk into their masjid or their church, they are practicing elements of African traditional religion. And the reason why they don't know is because they're not connected to it, so they don't know how to identify it. You can't identify what you don't know. I can go into a church and tell you if they're doing a prayer point, I can tell you what religion it comes from. I can go into any church or mosque, and if they start doing their prayer points or doing a dua, I can tell you where that thing comes from. Is it originally from that religion or is it borrowed? Is it because Bedouin spirituality is ancient? Don't put words in my mouth, son. I said what I said. I said Bedouin is dominant. The ethnic group of Bedouins is dominant in the region where you are. That's what I said. Don't put words in my mouth. I never said Bedouin spirituality is ancient. You asked a question, why Bedouin? And I said the reason why you want to start from Bedouin is because that is the dominant ethnicity where you live. And I said you need to go do your DNA to find out how much of that is already in your blood. I didn't say anything about Bedouin spirituality. Okay? This is what we're talking about. This is a low-hanging fruit. If I did a DNA test today, let me give an example. If I did a DNA test today, and my DNA test said I am majority Ewe, I start looking at Ewe spiritual traditions and cultures to better understand my identity. I am not going to do a DNA test, and the DNA test says I am majority Ewe. And notice I didn't say Ghana. Notice I did not say Ghana. Notice that I did not say Ghana. I said Ewe, which is one of the ethnic groups. Ghana has about 40 ethnic groups. I said Ewe, I'm very, very specific. I did not say Ghana. Because somebody's going to come out here and say, well, Ghana this, Ghana that. I did not say Ghana. I did not say the political entity of Ghana. I said Ewe, the ethnic group called Ewe. If my DNA says I am majority Ewe, or I have a significant portion of my DNA from the people of Ewe, the Ewe people, I can start doing my research from there. That's low-hanging fruit for me. Because if I'm to go to Ghana and I meet the Eve spiritual practitioners, and they present me to the spirit guides there, the spirit guides there will recognize me very quickly as their child. But if I disregard that and say, no, I like Ifa, I like the outfits they wear for their orishas, I like how they dress up, I like their ceremonies, I like how they dance. And I fly myself to Nigeria and I go to Oshobo and I get initiated into Ifa. The Orishas of Ifa will accept me as a visitor, not as their child. I'm not going to say anything else to you. I'm not going to say anything else to you. I'm just asking to learn from you and know if ancient is not part of why. Sir, no. Oh my God. Y'all don't mind him. He's one of my beloved sons. He's just being feisty. You're just being feisty. Go make some tea, drink some tea. Don't come here and try to get me going. Go make some tea. You can drink some tea. I'm actually out of my own tea. Y'all don't mind him. He being feisty. Okay. You're putting words in my mouth. Sue me. Sue me. Okay. Sue me. Sue. I said what I said. Sue me. Do whatever you want. Sue me. Sue me. That's what I said. Okay. So if I go to Yoruba land and I get initiated into Ifa and I get presented to the Orishas, I'm a visitor. I'm considered a visitor. Okay? It's a lot easier for me to operate from where I am considered a child than from where I am considered a visitor. Is it impossible to operate from where you're considered a visitor? It's not impossible, but it's a lot easier to operate from where you are considered a child, a part. You already have the DNA. Okay. That's the point. Okay. That's the point. So hopefully I should be putting out part 3, the East Africa uh God of Egypt, nice lady. Okay. So I'll be putting out part 3 dealing with East Africa. Some of the material there for East Africa is challenging, especially with respect to the Maasai. Some of you who are females might be disappointed in the Maasai people and some other groups like the Oromo out there in East Africa because they have predominantly patriarchal structures, period. So women don't have the same spiritual ritualistic roles like some of the ethnic groups we find in Central and West Africa or even in Southern Africa. But it doesn't mean that those people dislike women or that they are trying to subjugate the women. No, that's how their structure is. And so there are some ethnicities that, even when you start digging into their traditions, men have always been in charge. And it has nothing to do with the destruction of matriarchy. Because remember, in a previous class, we've talked about the myth of matriarchy, matriarchal societies. I had to get that word out. Matriarchal societies, because we have some scholars who say yes, you had matriarchies that preceded patriarchies, and then you have some other scholars who dispute that and say just because you found some things indicating matrilineal structures does not necessarily mean that those were matriarchal structures. Okay. All right. So when we look at places like East Africa, and I'm sure there are other cultures around the world, you'll find that the point blank period, they didn't have anything for the women. So the women will just handle certain things in the culture, but the women did not have dominant spiritual roles. And this can be very difficult for a lot of westernized women to understand, especially if you're looking at things with a feminist lens. And so that's why in these class series, you hear me saying, we're not looking at the material from a westernized feminist lens. Because what we don't want to do is to start saying or imputing that the absence of the feminine means a deliberate removal of the feminine. We don't want to say that. There are certain cultures that where the women are not dominant. Before colonialism and after colonialism, the women were never dominant. And we have to accept that. Okay. Go drink some tea. Get a cup of tea. Go drink some tea. Go get a snack. Go get a snack. It's not that serious. Okay. It's not that serious. We are all learning here. It is not that serious. It's not that serious. Okay. So if we, and so here's a question. So if we meet a culture that has, or an indigenous group that has spiritual traditions that don't surface or center women, should we force them to do so? Do we have a right to force them to do so? So if I came into your culture and I noticed that the women are not prominent, the women are not centered, the women, the women have subservient roles, or maybe the women don't even have any uh dominant roles, do I have a right to come in there and say, I want to change it? Do I have the right to come in and say, I want to come and change that culture because y'all are not putting women on the top of your spiritual traditions? Okay, Petra says, we, the Ajik, Ajikyu, okay, that's Kikuyu. That's the alternate spelling of Kikuyu, okay, of Kenya are called, okay, I had to wait for that fire truck to go by. So Perpetua says, we, the Agikuyu, which is also the Kikuyu of Kenya, are called children of Mumbi, the first woman. Okay. The question still remains that if I, okay, we were talking about the Maasai, not the Kikuyu. Okay. When we look at the Kikuyu, let me share with you some of the material I have on the Kikuyu, okay? Maybe you'll find it interesting now that you bring that up. Let me share what I have with you because I find it interesting because you have the Maasai and the Oromo on one side doing their thing, and the Oromo actually do have females, spiritual practitioners called the Kalidi, okay, who have more or less equal rights in mediating the creator called Waka, okay. But when you look at the Maasai structure, why is this saying it can't be opened now, but not permitted? Are you okay? Trying to open a document and it's telling me it's not, it won't let me open the document. Okay, let me see if I could. Okay, I think I took away the thing. It's on my other device. Hold on, let me fire up this other fine and trusty here. Is this material interesting? What we're talking about here, is it interesting to you? Because I can go on and on and on with this, but I'm not sure. Is it interesting? Do y'all find this interesting? I hope I haven't deleted my file. Did I not tell you? Mhm. Okay, hold on. Is it on the downloads or documents? Hold on. Because I know I was working on all those documents and do you know what? I think I just went ahead and deleted. Wait a minute. What the hell? What the hell? Did I delete this file? I was working on it last night. I was working on it last night on this device. I think I went ahead and deleted it today. I was cleaning up files and I deleted. Hold on. Thank goodness we're talking about it because I would have been out here like acting crazy. Hold on. Put back. Okay. Now I have two part threes. Thursday. Okay, now this is the one. But see now? I was getting confused. Okay. So let's look at I want to look at Kikuyu. Oh, this is this is Buganda and the Baganda. This is Luo. This is Masai. This is Oromo. Okay, here's the Kikuyu. So here's some of the preliminary information that I have about for the Kikuyu folks. Okay. I mean, I'm just closing all these multiple windows here. Okay. Okay. All right. All right. So some of you enjoyed the material. Okay, good. I'm looking for my screen. I have multiple screens open here. Hold on, let me get it in place. So when we look at the Kikuyu, okay, we have the Kikuyu people of Kenya hold a complex spiritual framework centered on Ngai, the supreme deity associated with Mount Kenya, Kirinyaga. One of the notable features of Ngai theologically is that it's not strongly gendered in the way many Western monotheistic conceptions of divinity are. Okay. And when we look at the material on the Kikuyu, we find out the women's ritual roles in traditional Kikuyu practice were tied substantially to land, fertility, agricultural cycles, and thresholds. So basically, birth, death, and transition. Okay. Remember, what we're looking at is what are the women's spiritual roles? And remember that um in the part one and part two, I did mention a lot of African spiritual traditions are earth based. And the earth in many of these traditions is considered female. Okay. And the mother. And you have terms like people of the earth, people of the land, children of the mother, children of the land, which lines up with what Perpetua said as the Kikuyu known as the children of Mumbi, the first woman. But here is the challenge. Are women centered in the spiritual practices of the land? That is really the question we're examining with these series. Are women in the middle of it? Are women prominent in it? Or are women being sidelined? One of the reasons why Ifa is popular is because women have prominent roles. They may not have the highest leadership roles, but they are prominent in Ifa. Women are prominent in Ifa. But when you compare that with another tradition, like, say, Ordinala of the Igbo, women are not prominent the way that women are prominent in Ifa. And that makes a difference in how women participate in spiritual practices from these traditions. It makes a big difference. And this is one of the reasons why Ifa is very attractive to people, especially those in the Americas, because you can go to Ifa, you can be made a priestess, you can be made an Iyanefa, mother of Ifa, equivalent to like a Babalao, the father of wisdom, the father of hidden wisdom. You can do initiations, and you can do all kinds of things, and you can have clientele, and you can help people. You can do work in your own right. You do not need the permission or the approval of men. But when you go into another tradition like Ordinala, the women who are priestesses oftentimes find themselves circumscribed by the male priests. And even some of the women, and you will hear me talk about this in these classes, in this series. Even we even have situations where the priestesses of Igbo Ordinani will say, I am not authorized to do this without a man, or I can't do this without a man. I need a man's permission to do this, and I need a man's permission to do that. And so they are not standing in their own spiritual authority completely. And you will hear them say things like, yes, I need a man's permission to do XYZ, or I need an ordinary priest permission, or, to do this thing or the other. I can't do it without the input of a man. But the reality of the thing is that if a woman has been properly and thoroughly initiated in ordinary, she can do a lot without the agency of a man. But the challenge is who is going to initiate her completely and authoritatively and honestly and authentically in ordinary. One of the huge things in ordinary is this issue of women's periods, menstruation. And you will find women being prohibited from doing a lot of things in Ordinani. Oh, women have menstruations, they're dirty, they're unclean, they're unfit, it's an abomination, and so on and so on and so forth. Okay. But when you look at some of the other spiritual traditions that we're examining, we find out that they don't have those restrictions, or even if they have those restrictions, they're minimized. And women are not sidelined just because they have periods. Okay. So that is one of the attractions of Ifa. It is more accepting, more welcoming of women. And I understand it. Let's say somebody went and did their DNA, and their DNA says, okay, you are 32% or 52% Igbo, you're 90% Igbo. Okay. And the woman is like, yay, I did my DNA. Let me buy a ticket, a flight to Igbo land, go hang out with the folks there, see if I can get initiated. If she should buy a ticket and fly to Igbo land, she will be frustrated. She will be humiliated, and she will be embarrassed. That's the truth of the matter. Because not only will she meet men who will invalidate her, she will also meet women who will invalidate her. Because the women have been indoctrinated that they don't own power the way that men do. She will meet a lot of Igbo women, even the Igbo priestesses, who will say to her, "Oh no, you can't do this without a man's permission, and you can't do that without a man's permission." And a lot of that came from Christianity. Okay. So when we look at the Kikuyu, we see the same thing. What the colonial and missionary period produced in the Kikuyu case is what we might call the domestication of female roles. So, not the complete elimination of women's ritual function, but its confinement to private and domestic spheres. While the public and recognized forms of spiritual authority among the Kikuyu became male elder dominated. So Christianity moved through Kikuyu society with extraordinary speed and depth in the 20th century, and the reshaping of gender roles within the church structure became the reshaping of gender roles in Kikuyu society more broadly. So here we have Perpetua saying the women are greatly sidelined in spiritual roles. Women with spiritual gifts have to struggle to be fully recognized, even as medicine women. This is it. And if you look at part 2 that I uploaded, was it yesterday or so, you will hear me say that Christianity came in. When we look at the story of Queen Nzinga, for instance, and her people, what happened among the Bakongo, Christianity came in and demonized the women, identified the women as witches. And then, even when the Congo with a K, they became Christianized and they became Catholics, there was even more chaos and a breakdown of not only their spiritual traditions and structures, but there was also a breakdown of their cultural structures to the point where you had ordinary parish priests ordering their kings around. And these are people that had contact with Catholic missionaries as far back as 1483, well before the transatlantic slave trade became a thing. So the emasculation of the men and the defeminization of the women happened across the African continent and even in other places, just like we were talking about the Bedouin, even the Bedouin in the Far East had their own spiritual traditions and practices until Islam came in and branded them witches. Islam did the same thing in West Africa as well, if you look at part 1. When we talk about the Bori among the Hausa and the Maganzua people, the women were the mediums. The women were the psychics. The women were the people that found out problems. You would go and say, here's what's going on. The woman would go in a trance state. She would be possessed by the spirit, and they will tell you what the issue is. And then Islam came along and all of that started getting hidden, and the women were called witches. But the funny thing is that despite this demonization by Christianity and Islam, these spiritual practices and spiritual roles by the women still persist. And they are practiced clandestinely. They're practiced in secret. And people will go and consult them. People will have problems. We'll go and consult them. And I mentioned this in part two, where people end up not having problems with, you know what, I know I'm a Christian, I know I'm a Muslim, but hey, my pastor is not able to solve this problem, or my imam, my mufti is not able to solve this problem. So I'm going to quietly go to my traditional person to solve this problem because this problem needs to be solved. And so a lot of Africans don't have a problem with that. So they will go to church and scream hallelujah. They will go to the mosque, the masjid, and they have no problem shouting Allahu Akbar. But in the evening or early in the morning, they will quietly go and consult their traditional spiritual practitioner to help them solve the problem that they're facing in their daily lives. Okay. So, so some of you are aware of the level one, reclaim your authority, and level two, embody your authority. Okay. That is what happened to me when I consulted you, Mama. Yeah. Yes, my dear. Okay. Just this morning, I got the same info from a contact. Okay. All right. So when, so in the level one retreat that I conduct, and we have one coming up next week. Is it next week? Yeah, May the 3rd, level one. Okay. These are the kinds of things we're reconnecting back to. Because the first thing we need to do is to be aware that this kind of information exists. If you are not aware that this kind of information exists, you can't use it because you're not aware that it exists. And so, in the level one, reclaim your authority retreat, we do this. We remember who and what we are. That's the first order of business. Because your spirit guides and your deities and whoever, whatever it is you're working with, will only do so much. If you don't believe in yourself, if you don't know who you are, if you don't know what you are, you leave yourself at the mercy of anything and everything. You don't even have the liver to hey everybody, see, a prodigal daughter just came back, Dr. Caring. She just came back. Prodigal daughter. Okay. So if you don't know, so you will be overly dependent on rituals. But what happens if the rituals don't work? You don't know what to do after that. You don't know what to do. Even when you go for a divination, you don't even know what to ask for because you don't know what information you need. And this is why I have drama with people when they come to me for divination. They come to me and say, should I marry him? Yes or no? And the question is that the question you're supposed to be asking? Because if you know more about your life trajectory and you come to a divination, you shouldn't be saying, should I marry him or not? Should I buy this house or not? Is my mother in law performing witchcraft on me or not? So let me throw it out there to see if people are getting this. Let's say, for instance, you are having problems with your man, or you're having problems with your woman, and you wanted a divination about this. What question would you ask? Let's say you came to me for divination. What would be the right question for you to ask? Okay, let's go. What would be the right question for you to ask? There's some drama going on in your relationship, and you came to me for a divination. What would be the right question for you to ask? Because I want to use your answer to illustrate what we're talking about here. So, TikTok, let's go. YT, let's go. Let's see. Okay, Miss Kiona says, my question would be, are we spiritually aligned? Is that the question that somebody who is operating from her authority would ask? Because you just asked a yes or no question. So if you came to me and said, are we spiritually aligned? I could say, if I wanted to get your money real easy, I could say yes. And you go, yay, Dr. Tochi approved. Does it tell you anything? Okay. My dad, I have daily tensions with my husband. What is your advice, ma'am? Okay. I like that approach. But instead of advice, because remember, you're coming for a divination, how would you say it? Because if you say, what is your advice? That means you're asking for my opinion. And the divination is not my opinion. Okay. Dr. Caring says, checking our partner relationship alignment. Okay. Doris Alfred said, I will ask, what do you see about my wife? So already you're positioning your wife as the problem person. Why would you say, what do you see about my wife? Why didn't you say, what do you see about me? So, which means you're already telling me that you see your wife as the problem. Okay. Now, let's look at Dr. Caring's offering, checking our partner relationship alignment. And if I respond to you, the alignment, okay, the alignment is there. Does that tell you anything? I like McDad's approach because McDad is now put a little bit of thought into it and said, I have daily tensions. That's an observation. But now the challenge is how to phrase the inquiry. Okay. Good evening, Bella. Okay, that's better. What is the solution? But if you are acting from your spiritual authority and you're coming for a divination and you are acting from your authority, how would you position that question? Okay, Miss Kiana says, what are my spirit guides saying about this relationship? I like that question because Miss Kiona's response illustrates perfectly what I'm talking about. If I come to divination and I say, what are my spirit guides saying about this relationship? I want everybody in class to think about this. If I come to the class and if I come to the divination and say, what are my spirit guides saying about this relationship? Who is in charge? Am I speaking from my spiritual authority? Am I speaking from as a spiritual sovereign? If I say, and Miss Kiona's response is perfect for illustrating this point. What are my spirit guides saying about this relationship? Am I speaking as someone who has spiritual sovereignty? Okay, Bella has another one she posted there that I missed. My question will be, why is my relationship not working? Is that a question being posed by somebody who has spiritual authority? And I'm putting it out to everybody. What do you think? Why is my relationship not working? Is that how somebody with spiritual authority would pose that question for divination? What are the causes? Is that how somebody with spiritual authority would pose that question? I like Miss Kiona's question because it illustrates so many things at the same time. Thank you. No. Miss Kiona, your question, does it demonstrate that you have spiritual authority? Because the way she asked this question is, what do you see how somebody will take this and they will map it onto their church situation or masjid situation or other religious situation? Because let's say Miss Kiona was in a church, she's not going to say, what are my spirit guides saying about this relationship? She's going to say, what does the Holy Spirit say about this relationship? Same question, slightly different format. Scorpio intuitive, I would ask if he's secretly gay. So he's a problem. You've automatically assumed he's a problem. Miss Kuna's question, if she were in the church, she would just substitute my spirit guides for Holy Spirit. What does the Holy Spirit say about this relationship? If she was in a masjid, she would say, what does Allah say about this relationship? Or if she wanted to personalize it, she would say, what does my Imam think about this relationship? So, Miss Kiona, you're saying that your question shows you have spiritual authority? Wrong. Nope. A person with spiritual authority will not show up at a divination and say, what are my spirit guides saying about this relationship? The way that a person with spiritual authority poses questions is very different from the way a person who depends on spirit guides will pose a question. Very different. Very different. So when you are not operating from your own inner authority, you assign causative effects to external people, external bodies. I want to know if he's secretly gay. I want to know what's wrong with my wife. I want to know what my spirit guides think about this relationship. I want to know. Okay. Tiara says, I'd ask, what is this relationship difficulty trying to teach me? Okay. Having clarity on the lesson helps you create the change. Yes. But now here's the challenge. If the person doing the divination says, "Oh, this relationship is trying to teach you patience," what are you going to do with that information? Let's say he's whooping your ass and you're saying, "Oh, but I'm in love with him," but he whooping your ass. And then you go to the diviner and you say, I want to know what this relationship is teaching me. And and the diviner says, oh, it's teaching you patience and endurance. Would you say, okay, and go back home and continue receiving the ass whooping? Is that what you would do? Okay, Kiona's question shows that she believes in the concept of spiritual guides. Yes, that's correct. She believes in the concept of spiritual guides, and there's nothing wrong with believing in the concept of spiritual guides. The problem is, what are you doing with the spiritual guides? Are you a supplicant to the spiritual guides, or are you a co creator with the spirit guides? Believing in the concept of spirit guides is not an issue, it's what you do with them. And so when we look at these women in these African earth based traditions, and we start studying what they do, and we start understanding how they get the results that they do, We need to start thinking, are they getting the results as supplicants, or are they getting the results as co-creators, as spiritual sovereign people? Miss Kiana is doing a variation on what Miss Tiara wrote. Why did this person come into my life? What is it trying to show me? That's still externally focused. If I were to go to a diviner and there's some drama going on in my relationship, and I'm to go to a diviner, the question I will ask is this: is this person in my life, if I continue with this person in my life, how will they help or hinder my life destiny? If I continue with this person, not if the person continues with me. If I, the one who decides, if I, the one who chooses, if I, the one who has options, if I continue in this relationship with this person, how does that affect, how does that help or hinder my life destiny, what I came here to do? That is how a person with sovereignty would pose the question. Not, oh, what should I do to keep him? What should I do to keep her? Is my mother in law casting witchcraft on my relationship? Do you see the difference? Did you get the difference? If you got if you got what I just said, let's have your eye in the comment section. Did you get what I just said? If you got it, let's have your eye. Let's have your AYE. Thank you. Dr. Karen. Dr. Karen, you have a lot of catching up to do. You started Lesedi and you were nowhere to be seen. So you need to start with Lesedi. We have changed direction. McDad said, learning this question requires a course in spiritual practice. Oh my God, that is too funny. This requires a course in spiritual practice. So, did you get that? Did you get the difference? My friend over here on TikTok. Teko, Tekogani. Tekogani. Okay. All right. So it is this spiritual reclaiming this authority is what we are learning in level 1 of Reclaim Your Authority Retreat. And that's why we're doing this for 2 hours a day for 7 days. That's why we're doing it for 2 hours a day for 7 days, because it's practical. It is a retraining. You were indoctrinated one way, and now you have to indoctrinate yourself in a different direction. It is a reprogramming, because there's a difference between me saying, oh, I want to know what my spirit guides have to say about my relationship and what my spirit guides are going to do about my relationship. There's a difference between that and saying, am I doing the right thing? Is this what I'm supposed to do? And what are the consequences of me continuing along this path? Because it's me. It's me doing the choosing. What are the consequences? If I continue this relationship with this person and I'm showing up every day for this relationship, what are the consequences for me? What are the consequences for me? So when we look at these women in these traditions, the way the women in these African earth-based spiritual traditions, the way they operated before colonialism is quite different from the way they operate today. Because if you remember in some other live stream class that I did, I said there is no pure religion today. Everything is mixed up. That's why if you go to a Pentecostal church in Africa, half of what they're doing there is from African spiritual tradition, and the people don't even know it. And many times the pastor or the prophet or the whoever who's leading them, the apostle, yeah, or pastor or prophet or whatever they call themselves leading the church, they know. They know that what they're doing with the people is coming from African traditional religion. They know. They know. But the congregation does not know. Thank you, Nyakonton. Thank you. They know. And believe it or not, a lot of masjids now are doing deliverance, just like Christian churches. A lot of masjids now in Africa are now doing what the Christian churches are doing deliverance, casting out, binding. Why? Because there's money in it. They're seeing that the Christian pastors and Christian leaders are cashing out from it. So they want in on the action. So there is no religion today being practiced pure. There's always some influence from somewhere else. So now we're having in Africa people practicing Islam with Pentecostal activity in it and African traditional thing in it. I can go to my Alpha in Ghana or go to my Alpha in Nigeria and say, oh, I have this problem. Not only will he give me a dua in Arabic, he will also give me some herbs to drink. Okay. So if all this cut and join, mish and mash is going on, where do you stand in the middle of it? How do you know what is true and right for you? How do you know? How do you know? That's where the spiritual authority comes in. That is where the spiritual authority comes in. And so that's what we're doing in the level one. You reclaim your spiritual authority. And once you start reclaiming it, and then in level two, you embody it, you will start seeing a whole bunch of nonsense falling away from you. Because now you have been taught how to act like a spiritual sovereign. Because all these years we were taught how to be spiritual servants. Our religions taught us how to be spiritual servants. But now we're learning how to be spiritual sovereigns, and you find a whole bunch of things start falling away. Okay. So the information is on the YT, the YouTube community post page. It's also available on my website, on the events page. It's also on Patreon. I highly encourage you. I highly encourage you to sign up for it. If you're like, okay, I want to go beyond just depending on and working with spirit guides. Is there anything wrong with working with spirit guides? No, there's nothing wrong with working with spirit guides. There's nothing wrong with going to primary school. There's nothing wrong with going to elementary school. There's nothing wrong with going to high school. You have to go to elementary school. You have to go to primary school. You have to go to high school before you can go to college, before you can go to university. And so you have to even understand what spirit guides are, the different kinds of spirit guides, ancestors, and so forth. You have to understand what all of that is. And then you start learning about yourself, and then you start learning your position with respect to spirit guides. So there's nothing wrong with working with spirit guides. We all start from there. We understand what they are, we acknowledge what they are, and then we start understanding the best way to work with them. That's the progression. And so that's why the level one, reclaim your authority, is a progression above and beyond just ordinary spiritual practice of working with spirit guides. So we start from spirit guides and we go and get initiated and we go and do all these things and we learn how to use altars and we learn how to do invocations and we learn how to work with spirit guides and call on them and so on and so on. So we learn all those things. Those are the basics. And then we start learning, what is my true position with respect to all of this? What happens if I'm calling on these spirit guides and I don't get the results I want? What do I do? Okay. Mhm. So that's what we do in these retreats. And I encourage you to participate and start moving and advancing beyond where you are. So that when you're looking at this Lesedi series, because remember, I just mentioned that this, Where Are the Women in African Spiritual Practice? This series I'm doing is going to be 7 parts. The person who is still at the level of depending on spirit guides is going to understand that material a lot differently compared to a person who is operating from their spiritual sovereignty. They will understand that material at two different levels, and they will operate that material from two different levels. Okay? I was intending to come on for about an hour and a half, and we've been here for 2.5 hours. I know that whenever we come on, we have fun together. I just want to express my appreciation and love for each and every one of you. How you show up for me at short notice. I set up a class, and many of you just come. I also appreciate those of you who work with me, who follow my guidance, and trust my judgment. I don't take that for granted. I'm also appreciative to all of you who come and allow me to use your comments and your perspectives as examples. And we learn from your questions and we learn from your comments. I appreciate your participation. I also appreciate those of you who wish me well and send beautiful invocations and offerings my way. I appreciate all of you who call me Papa, and I also appreciate all of you who call me Mama. It means a lot to me. Your love, your devotion, your obedience, I don't even know what adjectives to use or verbs to use. I might even be not using the right ones, but you know where I'm coming from. I appreciate that because you don't have to. I appreciate all of you taking time out of your busy day. You could be doing something else, but you chose to come and hang out with me in class today. I appreciate you. Okay. Thank you for consuming the content, the material, providing feedback, providing support. You come on the lives, you always show up, you hype, you do the hearts, the likes, the thumbs up. I don't think that many of us as content creators really thank you enough for showing up. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So I just want to take a few minutes to say thank you because I think sometimes it looks like we take these things for granted, but I want you to know I don't take it for granted. And then I also want to say this too. Uh-oh. Thank you. And I also want to say this to you. Those of you who are burdening me with work in the dream world, I'm going to flog you. Because sometimes I wake up in the morning and I'm so exhausted. And later on somebody says, "Oh, Papa Dr. Tochi, you were in my dream and you were showing me this and teaching me this or helping me with this, or we were doing a ritual together. Y'all run me ragged in my dreams. Can we agree maybe on one day nobody comes so I can sleep? Can we pick one day that nobody comes, don't come with questions, rituals, anything, hand holding, or anything like that? Can we agree on one day so I can sleep deeply that night? Was it 2 or 3 months ago that I got like so many people saying, "I saw you in my dreams. You were in my dreams. And we were doing this and we traveled to here and we were doing this ritual. Or you were teaching a class and we were in the class and we were doing all this." And I was like, no wonder I wake up so tired. I'm just like waking up so exhausted. So can we agree, pick a day where y'all let me sleep? Yeah, no, I like messing with you. So thank you very much. I love you all. Okay. Make sure you understand the content. And if you don't understand it, come in the comment section and ask questions. I want you to ask questions about the material, especially what is African spirituality? That is the first in the series. Number two, the Igbo Israelite myth. I talk about what does it mean to be Hebrew? What does it mean to be Israelite? What does it mean to be Jewish? How are these things defined? Who are all these other people claiming this? Why do they claim it? Okay. And then this series I just started, Where Are the Women in the African Spiritual Traditions? Many women, let me speak to the women here. You need to do better and you need to do more. You need to stop playing helpless. You are not helpless. I repeat, you are not helpless. Oh, I don't know what to do. This person did this to me. That person's doing that to me. I don't know what to do. Stop. You are not helpless. You are not helpless. You are not helpless. Oh, he did this to me, she did that to me, and you are not helpless. Okay. You do not need to be with people who disrespect you. You do not need to be with people who don't celebrate you. You don't need to be with people who don't honor you. You don't need to be with people who don't value you. You don't need to be. You can be cordial. You can be cordial. You can be polite, but you don't need to be with them. Learn how to live with impolite people with such boundaries that they are forced to become polite to you. Learn how to create those boundaries. Learn how to be with people and have boundaries such that they are forced to respect you. You don't have to fight them. You don't have to fight them. But you can exist in the same space with somebody in such a way that they have no option than to either respect you or vacate that space for you. Abby, you need to rewatch the class because we're about ending. You can be in the same office with somebody, be in the same house with somebody, but you have a boundary that forces that person to respect you. They may not like you. And your object, your target, your objective is not to make people like you. Your objective is to fulfill your life destiny. You're not here to make other people like you. That's not what you're here for. You're here to fulfill your life destiny. What is the point of having everybody like you, but you are not doing what you came here to do? No sense. You don't have to settle for less. When you understand what you are, and I'm not, notice how what I'm saying. I didn't say no who you are. I said what you are. When you understand what you are, you will treat people differently and people will treat you differently. You will attract different circumstances and different people. And certain things will no longer be able to come before you. Certain things will no longer be part of your experience. You will not even need to fight. Because fighting means you are not in resonance with your life destiny. You don't need to fight. You don't need to fight. If for any reason you are unable to participate in my level 1 reclaim your authority retreat, find someone else who might be teaching an equivalent. I have no problems with saying that. If you don't know how to work with spirit guides, your guardian spirit or your guardian angel, your ancestors, your different spirit guides with your creator, learn how to do that first. Put your house in order. Put your house in order. Put your protection in order. And then start working on yourself. It is hard to work on yourself if you're not secure. It's very hard. But with the amount of information that is available in the streets today, you have no reason to sit and say, oh, I am hopeless, I am helpless, there's nothing, I don't know. No cause for it. Once you start operating the way that you're supposed to operate, fighting becomes unnecessary. Anytime I fight now, I fight for entertainment. I'm entertaining myself. I'm not fighting for survival. I'm not fighting for relevance. If I fight now, it's just for entertainment. I'm bored. I just want something to do. Because I am at a point where I attract the people and situations I want and I repel the ones that I don't want. That's simple. And that's what I want for you. I want you to go through these Lesedi series. And as you're going through and learning what other people are doing in their cultures, I want you to say to yourself, how can I duplicate this for myself? How? Okay, I'm a woman and I come from a tradition where they hide spiritual information from women. How do I get that information so I can use it for myself and help myself? How? That should be your problem. Not, oh my God, somebody made a voodoo doll of me. How do I get the doll? How do I use a lemon and attack the person back? No, go beyond that. Go beyond taking four seeds of alligator pepper and putting it under your bed so that you can dream and have God reveal to you who your enemies are. Establish your life to the point where the enemies don't matter. There's no need to fight them because they don't matter. And they don't matter because they can't come close. Get beyond simple apotropaic devices. Oh, I need to, let me go and get some bay leaves and let me go get some oregano leaves and let me go buy a red candle. Start moving beyond that. Start moving beyond that. You can do more. 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 You can do more than that. If you were acting in your spiritual sovereignty, if you were acting from your inner authority, you wouldn't have even given that money to that relative in the first place. Do you see the higher level of this? And if you didn't give the money, you wouldn't have that problem of now saying, well, should I do a sour jar to get this person to give me my money back? A person who acts from their inner authority sees the problem before it even happens. But the person who is not working at the level of their inner authority does what they do, the problem arises, and then they're trying to do all these spells and rituals in order to rectify the problem. A person who is acting from their inner authority avoids the problem altogether. And they know I shouldn't give this person my money. Or if I'm going to give them money, I will give it to them as a donation. I will give them an amount that does not matter. So that if they don't return it to me, it doesn't bother me. Do you see the difference? Do you understand the difference I'm outlining here? Are you getting the difference? On one level of operation, you're solving problems. On another level of operations, you're not creating problems. Are you following what I'm saying? On one level, you're just operating, problems come solve, problem come solve, problem come solve. On another level of spiritual operation, you're totally avoiding the problems so that you are not spending time solving these problems you could have avoided. Now, that's not to say you can avoid every problem in life. That's not what I'm trying to say. But if you're going to deal with problems, you deal with significant problems. That should be your target. And for those of you who attended my retreats, remember the poem I shared? Go back and read that poem. For those of you who attended my retreats, remember the poem I shared. Go back and read that poem. That is what it means. That is what this life means. Your finances change and you need that money. You shouldn't have given out money you couldn't afford to lose in the first place. Because if I gave out money I couldn't have, I can, if I gave out money that I can afford to give away in the first place, it doesn't matter what happens with my financial circumstances. I gave out money I could afford. It doesn't matter. When you see someone begging for money on the street, do you give them money? Do you give them money, the money that you're going to miss? When you see somebody on the road begging for money, do you go give them a huge amount of money and then you go home going, oh my God, I wish I didn't give that person, that beggar on the street money? No. When we see people begging for money, we usually give them the amount of money that we won't miss, that we give them money that won't cause us to think twice. You give them spare change. Have you ever been in a situation where you needed money and you started regretting all the money you gave beggars? No. And the reason why you don't regret it is because you gave spare change to the beggar. So that's how it is when it is loaning money. If I am going to loan you money, I am going to give you the amount that I can afford to forfeit, regardless of what's going on with me. Make that a rule in your life, my dear, and you will never have this problem again. Make it a rule. If the person says, okay, I want $50,000, I'll give them 10. That way the person won't say I didn't give them anything, but I didn't give them 50,000. And then I'm not going to be up maybe 2 months down the road or 2 years down the road saying, oh, I wish I didn't give them 50,000. I could have used that 50,000 for something else. No, I give them 10 now. That's it. The person's like, well, I asked for 50. I gave you 10. Do you want it or you don't want it? And that prevents the person from going out to say, oh, she didn't help me. Yes, I did help you. I gave you 10. I may not have given you 50, but I gave you 10. Because I know if I give you the $50,000 and I have a problem down the road that $50,000 can solve, I'm going to be up at night saying I shouldn't have given you that $50,000. And I'm going to be trying to hunt you down to give it back to me. But if I gave you the $10,000, that's it. I'm not losing sleep over it. Whether you give it back to me or not, I'm not. And I don't feel bad because I know you asked me for $50,000, but I gave you 10. I gave you 1/20th. So I covered myself and I did you good. That's it. So even if you go out on the streets and go tell, oh, I asked her for $50,000, she didn't give it to me. If anybody hears that you asked me for $50,000 and I didn't give it to you, but I gave you $10,000, they will curse you on my behalf. They will curse you on my behalf because when they hear that you asked me for 50 and I gave you 10 and you're still complaining, all the people you're telling will turn around and call you ungrateful. They will call you ungrateful. They will curse you on my behalf. Okay. So when we're acting from this inner authority, we know when to give and when not to give. We know who to give and who not to give. We know what to give and what not to give. That's what we learn in these retreats. So I invite you, come and check it out for yourself and see for yourself how this works. So that when you're speaking with your spiritual crew, because remember we have said, whatever you say to your spiritual crew is a law. So that whatever you're saying to your spiritual crew, you're saying it from a position of sovereignty and not from a position of supplication. Big difference. Big difference. Okay. We are thankful to our Creator our guardian spirits, our ancestors for today's forbidden fruit. May it continue to yield fruit in our lives. Ashe. Lamadu, Ise, Ayebobo, Nyanho. Amen.